Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 81 Boss, we want to learn beast taming. The television screen quickly displayed the post-production table with the odds of the 5 contestants. Among them, the odds for Lightning Snake, which was the most popular among the audience, were only 1.58. The betting odds for the Unicorn, which the audience was most pessimistic about, were as high as 8.7. Third brother, aren't the odds for the Lightning Snake a little too low? The thug beside him grumbled. Third brother took the time to explain, it's not low, according to my calculations, the probability of the Lightning Snake snatching the moon crown this time is as high as 75%. This investment was simply a sure win. Bet 100 and earn 50, isn't that great? While number 3 was answering the questions of the members, he didn't forget about Link, who was sitting behind. She moved to Link's side and smiled. Boss, this must be your first time watching this show. Let me explain it to you. Link was quite familiar with the animal arena, but this didn't stop him from listening to third brother's opinion. Boss, you've seen the previous results and awards. The Lightning Snake has won the championship 3 times in a row, and this final is the first time the 5 contestants are competing on the same stage. Based on strength alone, the Lightning Snake has a higher chance of winning. Besides that, I have data analysis here. As third brother spoke, he took out a small notebook from his pocket. After opening it, he could see that it was filled with data and information. Although none of the 5 contestants have run on the track of the final of the Moon Crown, in the Zhuge Wanjun race, the Lightning Snake came in first with a 2-second lead in the previous race. It is the most powerful among the 5 contestants. The data on the field is one aspect, the power behind the players is another. Link's brows twitched as he asked, "Oh? The forces behind these contestants also have other factors that can affect the competition." That's right. I'll give you a simple explanation while we're warming up. The silver-backed monkey in the first seat is backed by the Win Latone family of the Uptown. Commander Win Latone is also one of the 4 commanders in Shandu, and he is in charge of the Air Force of Shandu. The leopard in the second seat is backed by the Hidden Alliance, which is the top boss of the Pacino family. It is a big force in the slums, just like the Canal Gang. The Lightning Snake in the third seat has an even bigger background. It was a pet of a druid in the dark forest. Boss, did you notice that all the other contestants were followed by beast tamers? Only this Lightning Snake came up by itself. This is because druids and wild animals have a unique connection ability that allows them to communicate telepathically, so they don't need to talk to humans. After third brother said that, he suddenly froze. Wasn't his boss an expert in beast taming? He would definitely know more about this. It seems like he's showing off his skills in front of an expert. Link didn't mind. He waved his hand and said, "You can continue." The unicorns on racetrack number 4 are creatures raised by the Cross Army. When they put on armor, they become war mounts. When they take off their armor, they can enter the race. The last gazelle has no background or identity. It was caught by a hunter from a village at the foot of Layan Mountain when he was hunting. After that, he saw that his speed had improved, so he brought him to Shandu to participate in the competition. He had already won the weekly championship 2 weeks ago. It was said that he had already earned tens of thousands of wasteland coins with this gazelle. There are even people willing to buy this gazelle for a high price of 100,000. So, to sum it up, third brother continued, other than the Lightning Snake, the other contestants are all natural creatures. They act based on training or instinct. Therefore, when he encountered a complicated situation, he had a certain amount of time to process it. However, the Lightning Snake is the pet of the druid in the gloomy forest. It is second to none in communicating with animals in the gloomy forest and has an advantage. When the others heard third brother's analysis, their eyes burned with passion and they couldn't help but shout, "Third brother's analysis is brilliant." Sure enough, it's the right choice to follow third brother. Even though you won't earn much, at least you'll earn without losing. They bought it purely based on their feelings, unlike third brother, who did such in-depth research. Link smiled. Seeing the bright smiles on everyone's faces, he couldn't help but pour cold water on their enthusiasm. I feel that the winner this time will be the Cross Army's unicorn. Third brother frowned slightly. He knew that his boss would not speak without thinking. He must have his own reasons for saying this. Boss, why do you say that? Link's lips curled up as he waved his hand. It's just my intuition, you don't have to take it seriously. Link wasn't spouting nonsense. If this unicorn really did belong to the Cross Army, it must be that guy. After the official open beta, the winner of the speed competition in the Colosseum had always been a unicorn called Chasing Wind, which was owned by the Cross Army later on. The unicorn even broke the record of consecutive wins in the end. Morose bought it with a huge sum of money and kept it as a treasure. In the last match of Wind's career, Morose even held a grand retirement ceremony for him, which caused a huge sensation in the game. Just as Lin Ke was thinking about this, Mr. Han's signature voice came from the television again. By the way, I forgot to tell everyone that 2 heavyweight guests will be attending today's Moon Crown competition. Let's welcome them. Soon, a slightly chubby man in a suit and leather shoes appeared on the screen. His hair was combed back and he had a faint smile on his face. He was sitting on the sofa in the VIP area, holding a pure gold dragon head scepter in his hands. His blue eyes were extremely deep, and just staring at them could give people a terrible pressure. The profiteering nature of a merchant and the pressure of an emperor were cleverly unified on this man. The words post-production appeared on the screen: Shandu's Minister of Economy, Morose. When the camera was focused on Morose, all the cheers on the field disappeared. It was as if the television had been turned off. There was only silence and pressure. No one dared to cause a scene in front of Morose, one of the 3 emperors of the Sand Capital. It wasn't until the screen left Morose and the audience let out a breath of turbid air that the audience returned to normal. The shouting and conversations gradually resumed. This was Link's first time seeing Morose after his rebirth. Just like in his memory, Morose seemed kind on the surface but was giving off an invisible pressure. Other than his wealth, it was also related to Morose's strength. Did people really think that Morose was only rich but not powerful? No way, no way, no way! Soon, the screen moved to the second guest. He was dressed in ancient medieval armor, with a messy beard on his face. His face and eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. At first glance, he gave people the illusion that he was a medieval knight who had crossed over to the wasteland. However, this was also in line with the ancient style of the Crusaders, who stubbornly believed that the Day of Reckoning was God's punishment for the world and the rejection of all electronic equipment. The man on the TV was Arthur, the paladin commander of the Crusader team. Now that Morose and Arthur had appeared at the same time, Link's guess was confirmed. This unicorn was about to change hands. Very soon, the match officially began under the commentary of Teacher Han and Director Zhang. As the 5 countdown lights went out one by one, the 5 separate tracks were lifted. The animals rushed out of the track. The lightning snake took the lead, like a silver bolt of lightning. The gazelles were good at climbing, so they followed the upslope as if it was flat ground. The leopard showed its strong explosive power and kept a close distance from the first group. On the other hand, the unicorn and the silver-backed monkey were at a disadvantage from the start. There was a clear gap between them and the first group. The corner of third brother's mouth lifted into an unnoticeable smile. It seemed that the omnipotent boss also had times when he was wrong. With the unicorn's ability, it would already be a miracle if it could guarantee that it wouldn't be ranked last, let alone first place. The members of the other sects in the resting area all clutched their tickets in excitement. They could not suppress their excitement and stood up to call out Lightning Snake's name in unison. By the looks of it, Lightning Snake was definitely going to win the Moon Crown this time. 2 minutes later, the rest area was deathly silent. Everyone's faces were pale, and they were all dumbstruck. They had never expected that in the last 500 meters of a straight sprint, the unicorn would directly jump from last place to first place in one breath. They still couldn't figure out why the unicorn on track number 4 could turn into a holy light in the last part of the straight track, dragging a long trail of light to the finish line. Third brother recovered from his daze and thought of his boss's prediction before the competition. She fell to her knees in front of Link. "Boss, I want to learn beast taming." The other hatchet men also came back to their senses and knelt on the ground. The air was filled with resentment and regret. "Boss, we also want to learn beast taming." Chapter 82 The Hellhound's Application. "Boss, how did you know that the unicorn would win?" Third brother racked his brains but still couldn't figure out why the unicorn would suddenly turn into light and move quickly. Looking at his laptop, he realized that he had not used this move in the previous 3 matches of the unicorn. Even in one of the matches, when it had only gotten second place, it had never used the move, light haste. Link glanced around and saw that the ignorant thugs had their eyes wide open as well. Their eyes were filled with the desire for the truth. Rather than a unicorn, it's better to call it a Pegasus. An adult unicorn that has evolved after being nurtured by holy light for a long time. It has the ability to transform into holy light. If you look closely, you can see that there are prominent stripes on the ribs of the unicorn, which is a sign of growing wings. Thus, I am certain that the master of this unicorn has a high position within the Cross Army Corps. Third brother scratched his head. Unicorns were rare enough. Edifying the holy light and evolving into a flying Pegasus? He had never heard of it. The television screen was now giving a close-up of the winning unicorn, and the protrusions and stripes on its ribs could be clearly seen. "It really has stripes. It's exactly the same as what boss said, Ying Luo. The odds are 8.7. If I bet on it, I'll earn 9 times more." Some of the hatchet men were heartbroken and sighed, as if they had missed the big prize. "I'm afraid that your aptitudes aren't enough to learn beast taming." Link's eyes swept across everyone. When his indifferent gaze landed on them, they felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on their faces. Everyone's eyes were burning with greed, but Link ruthlessly extinguished it. "But you can buy them with me when the time comes." Everyone's eyes lit up again, and the sadness of missing their bet was immediately replaced by an even greater ecstasy. "Boss is wise. Long live the boss." The group of people were like children, their faces brimming with bright smiles. The coercion of White Crane Hall and the division of territory were all thrown to the back of their minds at this moment. Number 3 looked at Link with admiration. He felt as if Number 3 was radiating a great light. No wonder boss wasn't worried about the problem of income at all. With his eyesight, he could make a lot of money just by placing a bet. Third brother had a strong premonition. The Jack gang would become great again. Then, the award ceremony began on TV. The unicorn won the monthly championship with a prize of 300,000 yuan and won the title of monthly champion of the land speed competition. In addition, the unicorn would also receive a series of promotions, including but not limited to magazines, TV shows, endorsements, and so on. The sum of these appearance and endorsement fees was not a small sum. If they won the championship in the next quarter-finals, the prize money would be higher, and they would be more well-known. If they had the chance to win the annual championship, the prize money alone would be 1 million yuan. After that, Link and the others looked at the other animal fighting events. All sorts of ranking battles were exciting, and the beast fights were extremely bloody, with blood and flesh flying everywhere. The treasure-hunting mouse didn't show much expression. It was a qualified onlooker. As for the statue, it was just leaning against the door, not even watching TV. Link decided to give it a better meal tomorrow. When the hellhound saw the fighting scene on the TV, it would occasionally let out a curse, its eyes full of contempt. The corners of Link's mouth curled up slightly. He didn't expect the hellhound to be so impulsive. It was like a teenager in puberty, easily triggered. The hellhound nudged Link with its head, whimpering and pleading. "You have triggered the pet mission Wolf's Glory. Accept/reject." Mission hint: the hellhound is very indignant when it sees the sissies in the Colosseum on TV. It wants to fight personally and tear off the heads of those useless people. Bring the hellhound to the Colosseum and win respect and glory. Mission requirements: participate in a death match between wild beasts and win any number of rounds. Mission reward: 5,000 experience points for a single match and 20,000 experience points for winning 3 consecutive matches. Link's brows furrowed slightly. He then looked at the hellhound, who was full of anticipation. Link never expected that a dog could trigger a mission. He looked at the mission description. The reward was not low. If he won 3 consecutive rounds, he would get a total of 35,000 experience points. Except, Link had been prepared to go to the Colosseum as well. He didn't expect the hellhound to volunteer. He wanted both the money and experience. The hellhound was very excited at Link's permission and ran around the rest area. "Boss, why is Wang Chai so excited all of a sudden?" Fu asked curiously. "I promised to bring it to the animal arena to participate in the death match, and it can't wait any longer." The other hatchet men immediately became excited, only third brother's expression instantly became serious. "Boss, Wang Chai is just an ordinary hunting dog. I'm afraid he won't be able to survive the death match." "That's right, boss. If we really can't handle it, that mutant wolf can also attack. It's fierce enough. Wang Chai is just an ordinary hunting dog. When wild beasts fight to the death, they must fight to the death before giving up. How can he fight with those ferocious wild beasts?" After spending a day with the hellhound, the other hatchet men all had some feelings for this quiet and obedient watchdog. It was not noisy and rarely barked. If he discovered anything, he would go to the members and use his teeth to tug at the corner of his clothes or the leg of his pants to hint. The name Wang Chai was something that third brother and everyone came up with together. The happy hellhound was also dumbfounded. "Wait, what's going on?" He had just convinced his master to allow the animal arena to participate in the competition. This group of people actually stood up to stop him. Was this a way of beating up teammates and protecting the enemy? "Don't worry, everyone. Since boss said it, he must have thought of a solution." Fu stood up at the right time and said. He was 100% obedient to his boss's decision. Whatever his boss did, he must have his own reasons. Link smirked. These people had never seen a hellhound's true form. It was an existence that even tigers and lions feared. The gang members actually thought that the hellhound couldn't withstand the intensity of a fight to the death between wild beasts. After hearing Fu's words, third brother recalled his boss's stratagems, and there had never been an accident. He couldn't help but rub his temples. Her concern made her confused. "All right, we've finished watching the TV show. Other than those on night duty, everyone else can go back and rest." Third brother got up and told the members to pack up and go to bed. "Fu, go to the yard and move a few cobblestones to the basement." After watching the live broadcast of the battle between wild beasts, Lin Ke finally thought of a way to synthesize the mutated wolves. The mutant wolves were extremely aggressive, and the black fur covering them was only a drop in the ocean. Wild animals attacked by tearing, biting, and gnawing. To put it simply, they tore open wounds. However, as long as one had an extremely strong defense, all attacks were like floating clouds. When Ah Fu carried a few cobblestones and walked into the basement, he found that boss was already sitting with his legs crossed. The originally fierce and violent mutated wolf was now curled up in the corner of the cage, like a naughty child who had been beaten up. It was the first time he experienced the sinister side of society. Mutated wolf, adult, plus cobblestone, white, equals. Success rate 65%. Bone synthesis will consume 90 health points. Do you wish to synthesize? Yes/no. Link's eyebrows furrowed. Was there a problem with his combination? It shouldn't be, Ying Luo. Link scratched his head. The success rate of the mutated wolves in the wilderness was so low? Link thought for a moment and decided to synthesize it. Although the success rate was not high, what he needed was the defense of the mutant wolf. The blood cocoon quickly wrapped up the mutated wolf, and the system showed that the incubation time was 30 minutes. After so many attempts, Link's interest in the new material had faded. He decided not to wait in the basement for half an hour. Instead, he went straight to bed and would read it the next morning. Chapter 83 New Changes. Night. Deep in the desert of Sand City, a military base surrounded by wire nets was brightly lit. The dense patrolling soldiers and the strict entry registration regulations made the atmosphere tense as if they were facing a great enemy. The desert should have been cold at night, but the military base was still warm. If one listened carefully, they would hear a constant buzzing sound coming from under their feet. In the underground laboratory in the desert, the Mun Kingdom's commander was in charge of security. The scientists in the laboratory were running back and forth, making the final preparations for the start of the experiment. All data is normal. The energy pillar will be activated in 10 minutes. All departments, get into position. All departments, get into position. The huge experiment hall was heavily guarded. The red emergency evacuation light had already lit up. All the frontline staff began to organize the information and began to evacuate from the innermost energy pillar experimental field. The 2-meter-thick door slowly fell and made a dull sound when it touched the ground. The second and third gates were immediately shut. In the middle of the barrel-shaped laboratory, there was an observation room with tempered glass. All the scientists, researchers, and higher UPS of the Shadow government were anxiously waiting for the countdown. Commander Mun was among them. "Commander, we'll be counting on you and your fox hunting squad for the security." The person who spoke was wearing a white lab coat and a pair of black glasses. He looked gentlemanly, and the work card on his chest said, "The person in charge of the laboratory in Château Area 1, Dr. Ludwig." "Doctor, don't worry, a soldier's duty is to obey orders. Since I've been ordered by General Alonso to protect the laboratory, no matter what happens, the fox hunting team can only advance and not retreat," Commander Mun said with a firm gaze. On the other hand, Professor Ludovic, who was in charge of the laboratory, had an uneasy expression. From the discovery of the energy pillar within the Freedom Federation's borders to the discovery that the injection of energy can cause the array to react, it took a total of 5 years. However, this is the first time the 3 great laboratories of the Freedom Federation have activated a giant array reaction together. We'll be facing the unknown. From the observation room, Dr. Ludovic looked at the reaction of the energy pillar at the bottom of the room. It was now emitting a purple light. This was to use rays of different wavelengths to sterilize the main laboratory in order to remove the previous man-made traces and ensure that the experiment was not disturbed by additional parameters. Dr. Ludwig had his hands in his pockets and his back facing Commander Mun. However, through the reflection of the transparent glass, one could see his extremely nervous face. He seemed to be explaining to Commander Mun, but he also seemed to be talking to himself. "We've conducted a few small-scale charging experiments in the laboratory before. We've studied that the runes on the energy pillar seem to be able to cause spatial fluctuations. This time, we've joined forces with Dragon City and Farnight to carry out a large-scale experiment. I'm not sure what kind of impact it will have. After the reckoning, many technologies and civilizations on Wasteland Planet were lost or destroyed. However, it was also a blessing in disguise, and a new system bloomed. However, after repeated destruction and uninhibited development, the wasteland has become uninhabitable." Ludwig opened his arms, his eyes shining with fanatical light. "The small energy pillar arrays can cause spatial fluctuations, and the 3 large energy pillar arrays that span thousands of kilometers may be able to tear open space and create wormholes. If we're lucky enough, we might be able to find a new home." Dr. Ludovic's words were filled with emotion, but Commander Mun's expression didn't change. His mission was to protect the scientists and the base, and deal with all possible crises and disasters. Everything else had nothing to do with him. Doctor, Dragon City and Fairies Laboratory are requesting a video call. Ludwig pushed up his black glasses, put down his hands awkwardly, and followed the staff back to the main console. After Ludovic left, Commander Mun took out his walkie-talkie. All departments of the Sha City's garrison army, report the situation. Special Forces, deployment complete. The ground forces of the Shudu garrison army are all deployed. The air force of the Shadu garrison is already patrolling the territory, ready to be dispatched at any time. Shudu missile unit, waiting for orders from the commander. As the chief commander of the security forces, Commander Mun had absolute authority and could mobilize almost all the troops in the Sand City. The Mun commander glanced at the huge red countdown on the observation room and said in a deep voice, "Missile unit, listen up. If anything out of control happens at the base later, all the artillery and missiles must land at the base's coordinates immediately to prevent the situation from escalating." "But Commander, then you..." "No buts, everything is for the benefit of Shandu." "Yes, sir." The conversation between the two was heard by the other troops. At this moment, they could not help but sigh. He was indeed the man who was called Iron-Blooded Commander by General Alonso. The scientists in the observation room stared at the countdown and the various numerical indicators on the screen. The fox hunting special forces were all stationed outside the triple-layer protection door, surrounding the experimental field with guns. In addition, there were also jeeps and tanks with heavy machine guns. Almost all the firepower that could be arranged was set up. The Air Force was on standby at the air base dozens of kilometers away. Once the land force and special forces were unable to cope with the sudden changes in the base, the Air Force would set out and launch a fixed attack on the desert base. If even the Air Force could not stop it, the missile troops would carry out carpet bombing to prevent the situation from worsening. The same situation was happening in Dragon City's Molten Base and Phase Icy Lake Base. At this moment, everyone in the Freedom Federation's three great laboratories was on guard against a great enemy. Exploration was always accompanied by risks, and the number of benefits was proportional to the risks. The countdown reached 0, and the three laboratory heads pressed the red button at the same time. In the core experimental field, a transparent tube was filled with crimson energy, which followed the channel to the bottom of the energy pillar. The energy seemed to have a life of its own as it was absorbed by the energy pillars. The mysterious runes on the stone pillars lit up one by one, and the space in the center of the energy field formed by the 13 stone pillars began to distort. In the observation room, the researchers were monitoring the data. Complex data and signals appeared on the monitor in front of them, and people were constantly reporting the situation. Spatial distortion detected. The area of the spatial distortion is still increasing, and it has exceeded the strength of all previous experiments. The energy is accumulating more and more. Doctor, should we reduce the energy output? I'm not reducing it. I'm increasing it. Everyone in the underground base had large beads of sweat on their foreheads. Their expressions were extremely solemn, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The red light in the core laboratory was projected through the glass onto the walls of the base and spread to the observation room, as if it was the scene before the end of the world. This scene reminded the Mun Kingdom commander of the day of reckoning that he had experienced when he was young. It was also filled with red light. Doctor, we've received the energy signal from Dragon City's Molten Base. We're connecting to Dragon City's energy signal. Quick, record all the first-hand data and send it to the backup server. Ludovic's glasses glowed, and the excitement on his face looked extremely ferocious under the red light. The signal of the Dharmanite Icy Lake Base is also successfully connected. Doctor, I detected that the energy of the three bases is expanding outward at an extremely fast speed. On the display, the energy of the three bases spread rapidly like a seismic wave. The affected area had already reached a radius of more than 100 kilometers and was still expanding rapidly. In just a few minutes, the energy spreading from the three bases interweaved like ripples, forming an even larger curtain. The anticipated huge impulse to break open the sky did not appear. Instead, there was another situation. Doctor, a spatial singularity has been detected. The coordinates are in the desert 100 kilometers away. Another spatial singularity has been discovered. The third one. The fourth one. Very quickly, the Freedom Federation's information map was filled with dense red signal dots. Above the underground base in the desert, a signal point appeared. Quick, switch the video signal to the ground. Commander Mun, ground forces, please come forward to check the situation. Very quickly, the monitoring device's signal was connected to the screen. On the screen was an ignorant young man. He was surrounded by countless soldiers of Shandu, and there was also a piercing white light from the searchlights of the helicopters in the sky. Haha, did I get a random opening? When the players saw the soldiers and troops around them, they were ecstatic. The next second, the taser gun was fired, and more than a dozen electric nets flew over. Tsit-zai-zai-zai-zai. The sound of electric currents crackled, and the young man's body trembled. His eyes rolled back and he frothed at the mouth. Commander, the unknown intruder has been captured. When Link woke up the next day, he washed up. The first thing he did was to go to the basement to see the masterpiece he had synthesized. His original intention was to try the second synthesis of the first synthesis formula and the second synthesis by adding two materials directly. He already had all the steel bars for today. However, when Link entered the basement and saw the mutated wolf in the cage, his hair stood on end and his eyes went blank. His mind, which had just cleared up, was in a mess again. I only added cobblestone. Why did it become like this? Link then let go of the steel bar, allowing it to fall to the ground. Steel bars were no longer needed. Chapter 84 The System Update, 1/5. Link's brows furrowed. He had self-proclaimed that he had already figured out the routine after synthesizing so many times. However, this golden finger would always bring him a surprise or a scare. At first, Link was hoping that the mutated wolf's fur would become as hard as a cobblestone and become invulnerable. But now, there was no longer any fur. Even the flesh and blood had completely disappeared. All that was left was a skeleton. Monster attributes. Name, Skeleton Wolf. Grade, White. Race, Canine. Attribute, Undead. Level, 10. Initial Skill 1, Lethal Bite LV1, the teeth of the skeleton wolf contain the breath of death. The target bitten will lose 50 HP and will be affected by the chill of the dead. Movement speed will be reduced by 50% for 10 seconds. Initial Skill 2, Bone Pile Disguise, disguise as a dead wolf, no limit on usage. Description, a wolf with only a pile of bones left. A wolf. Link couldn't understand how the cobblestones had turned into a pile of skeletons. These two things were completely unrelated. However, this meant that Link couldn't continue with his experiments. There's no other way. I can only find more suitable animals to practice on. The skeleton wolf's skills were pretty good, especially the bone pile disguise and the fatal bite skill. First, it would turn into a pile of bones and play dead. When the enemy got close, it would bite. It felt so good. All right, said Link, waving his hand, you can come out now. For the skeleton wolf, the iron cage in front of it could no longer restrain it. However, because it did not have an owner's order, it had been thinking about its wolf life in the cage after hatching. However, even after Link's order, the skeleton wolf still did not move, as if it were a statue. Not coming out. Link stood where he was and watched. He realized that the wolf still had no reaction. At this point, Link had a rough idea of the wolf's problem. Perhaps it was because he didn't have a brain or ears, but this guy's reaction was a little slow. Link had no choice but to open the cage for it. However, as soon as he got close to Ying Ying, voila! The skeleton wolf disintegrated instantly, turning into pieces of loose bones, falling to the ground through the gap of the iron cage. Immediately after, the white bones on the ground began to tremble and regrouped into a skeleton wolf. Well, there was at least a 5-second delay. Lin Ke brought the wolf out of the basement. Considering the gang members' acceptance of undead creatures, Link decided not to reveal it for now. The skeleton wolf did not need to eat or drink, and after losing its flesh and blood, it became much smaller. Originally, the mutant wolf was a few times bigger than a hound, but now that it had lost its fur and flesh, it had instantly become a delicate little wife, small and exquisite. Link found a board and placed it on the side of the office table. The skeleton wolf was also very obedient. It lay on the board without moving, looking like a petrified work of art. Not long after Link finished, number 3 knocked on the door and came in. He looked worried. "Boss, I have something to report. There seems to be an enemy in our gang." Link's brows furrowed. He didn't know how third brother came to this conclusion. Even Painter John couldn't escape from the treasure-hunting mouse's sense of smell. Link didn't believe that anyone could escape from the hellhound, sand eagle, white-blade sea eagle, and the treasure-hunting mouse. "Isn't the open-air balcony of our Jack gang's yard under construction? We moved some cobblestones here to lay a cobblestone path, but we found that there were fossils in a few cobblestones. That's why I specially picked them out and prepared to appraise them today to see if they're worth anything." Number 3 clapped his hands and said, "But this morning, I found that the cobblestone was gone. Later, I asked a few of my brothers on night duty, but they got nothing." Link's brows relaxed. The case had been solved. It turned out that Fu had brought over a few cobblestones with fossils, which was why the mutated wolf had become a skeleton wolf. This explained everything. "I asked Fu to move the stone in last night. The brothers on duty probably didn't see it." The third brother heaved a sigh of relief, as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. "So it's Fu who moved away. It's fine then. Boss, the second thing. You're the new boss now, so shouldn't we change the name of our gang? In the past, the boss was Jack, so the gang was directly called the Jack Gang. However, now that the boss had changed, it felt a little weird to call them Jack Gang." Link pondered for a moment. The third brother's perspective was tricky and he raised a constructive question. He had never thought about changing the name of his gang before, mainly because he wanted to set up a company when he was successful in the future and then change it to a better name. However, now that the closed beta had begun, it was a bit awkward. He needed to build momentum in advance. "Third brother, do you have any good suggestions?" "I think we can just change it to your name, boss. As the gang grows stronger, we'll make the boss's name known." This was really simple and crude. Is this really a good idea? The thought of using his own name as the guild's name made Link feel ashamed. With the boss's strength, it'll be easy for him to become famous in the Shitu. When the time comes, when the boss is mentioned, they'll know that we're on the Link Gang. Speaking of the Link Gang, people will immediately know that it's the boss gang. Link nodded repeatedly. He had to admit that third brother's words made sense. "All right, let's call it the Link Gang." As soon as he finished speaking, a prompt suddenly popped up from the system. "You have successfully named your guild. You have received the title leader of the Link Gang. You have received 1 influence point. Unlock the fame section." Link looked at the sudden fame and glanced at the system. He realized that 3 more options had appeared in the system. One was fame, one was pet, and the last was forum. As for the reason for the sudden appearance of the new options, Link had a rough idea. It should be a new change brought about by the closed beta. He entered the reputation menu and a list of forces and reputations appeared on his interface. Wasteland Gang, Nemesis, -3000, Defected Slave. Machinery Faith, Hatred, -2300, Traverser. Platinum Hotel, Friendly, 200/3000, Beginner Assassin. Link Gang, Worship, 24,000/ The leader of the Link Gang. Inland Water Gang, Neutral, 250/1000, subordinate gang leader. Link then entered the pet menu. Treasure hunting mouse, sand eagle, silver queen ant, Forbes, silver array wall ant, self-destructing fly, white saber sea eagle, vanilla mud horse, hellhound, and skeleton wolf. All of them were in the list. Wait, didn't the sand rat run away? Why is it still in the list? Link realized that he could click on every pet to check their details. However, only the sand rat received a notification that said, "Target is too far away, please update your data immediately." Link's brows twitched as he thought, could it be that as long as he got closer to the sand rat, he would be able to find it? Link gave up on the idea after a while. The desert was so big that finding a sand rat that could turn into sand was as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. Chapter 85. Even though I'm not a human, you're a real dog, 2/5. After third brother finished speaking, he saw that eldest brother was in a daze and silent, so he stood up at the right time. "Boss, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Link then pulled his attention away from the system and asked, "Did you see Fu?" "I didn't see him when I woke up this morning." "Ah, Fu, he went out to buy newspapers this morning. He should be back soon." "I could have just sent my little brother to do it," third brother said with a smile. But Fu was worried, so he went with Fred. "Oh right," Fu got up early and made breakfast. "I'll bring it in for boss now." Fred was Ah Fu's underling. Link had seen him on the roster before. His specialty was driving. Yup, it was the kind of driving with proper driving skills. Link was relieved to see them together. After delivering breakfast, number 3 walked out of the office. With his sharp eyes, he noticed that boss seemed to be thinking about something important, and he should not be disturbed at this time. Even when a complete wolf fossil was placed on the side table of the office, third brother did not say anything. He was waiting for Fu to come back and ask indirectly. As soon as Link entered the forum, the first thing he saw were 3 panel options. These 3 sections were the 3 novice planets of destiny. They mainly focused on the modern wasteland. Steampunk-style Victoria. There was also a Pandora with magical colors. When the players entered the game, they would be asked about their preferences, and the players could choose any one of them to be their novice planet according to their preferences. All 3 planets had a complete super system, which was the 4 main professions. However, each planet had its own specialty. Wasteland was a modern planet, and the mainstream professions were pugilists and mechanics. Planet Victoria had a 19th century steampunk background, and the main professions were mystics, such as werewolves and vampires. Pandora had a fantasy background, and the main profession was an esper. There were a total of 1,000 players in this closed beta. However, after choosing their preferences and splitting the players, there were only a few hundred players on each planet. Link didn't say anything and entered the Wasteland section. Immediately, Link saw an entire page of posts, all of which were players discussing problems. Oh my, there are only a few hundred players and there are already so many posts? After a quick glance, there were all kinds of messy questions. From why the game didn't recover HP, to why there was no beginner's guide, to how difficult it was to make money. He had worked hard to complete 3 errand missions, but in the end, he only got 10 yuan as a labor fee in addition to the experience. Why was there a limit to the number of deaths, which was only 50 per week? There were also some players who were randomly placed in extremely harsh environments after entering the game, experiencing the dangers of society as soon as they entered. Link suddenly remembered what a closed beta player had said. During the closed beta, there was indeed no novice village. Later, the closed beta players jointly suggested that the random dropout was changed to a few fixed spawn points. Then, Link saw a few posts about Cola. There was a player who landed in the desert base as soon as he was born. He was immediately surrounded by the Shandu troops and brought back to the secret base for all kinds of interrogation. Under the interrogation of the scientists and soldiers, the annoying player said, the mighty dragon of heaven, the Buddha of Prajna, the venerable Kasadagarbha of the world, the Prajna Ba and Kong Kang Kong. Then, he was knocked unconscious and sent to the dungeon. The comments below the post were also quite interesting. Player 1, failed flirting and got F***ed. Player 2, is there a player kindness association? I was also arrested by the military when I was born, but I was locked up at the bottom of the lake. Player 3, I advise you not to tease the NPCs. The NPCs in this game are extremely intelligent. I was walking on the street and whistling at a beautiful woman, then I was beaten up by a group of people. Link realized that he could enter the forum, but he couldn't reply to the post. All the input dialog boxes were grayed out. Link refreshed the Wasteland section again. This time, he stared at the person who posted it, looking for a few famous players from his previous life. Soon, Link's eyes brightened. He found the name fluttering in the wind. Following the name of the post, he looked at the title F***ck, this game is too real. I didn't expect that the cold Zui Feng would exclaim in such a way. In Lin Ji's previous life, the closed beta players had cleared all their posts after the end of the closed beta. Therefore, if players wanted to know more about these famous closed beta players, they could only find out about them from the content of the open beta or from other closed beta players. Link saw that wind was unusually cold. Even his replies were short. Even in the in-game interviews, he was cold and aloof, maintaining his character setting of not saying a word. I didn't expect the guild leader of the Miracle Guild to have such a childish side to him. The Miracle Guild was not a small guild. It was one of the top 10 guilds in the gaming world. Wind Chaser, Floating Soft, was not only the founder but also the old guild leader. She had led the guild to various games for 10 years and had won many honors. This made Link even more curious about what had happened to this guy in the Sand City. Link was stunned for a moment when he clicked on the post. He almost laughed out loud. F***ck, this game is too real. The people from the big city were too uncultured. I'll get hit by a car even when I'm walking on the side of the road. He really had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. After looking at everyone's posts, they were either complaining about being caught the moment I was born, or that I was in the middle of nowhere. I thought that I was lucky to be born in Shadu and was born in the upper class. After completing 5 F-level errand missions in one night, he had finally reached level 2. He had also saved 50 yuan and wanted to buy breakfast to reward himself. So, I spent 20 RMB to buy a bottle of iced cola and half a fried chicken, ready to find a place to eat. I didn't expect a car to hit me directly and I died on the spot. I didn't even have the time to open the ice cola, I didn't even have the time to take a bite of the fried chicken, and he was already gone. My mental state has collapsed. At this point, I only want to say to the perpetrator, although I'm not a human, you're a F***ing dog. Link tried to hold back his laughter until he almost cried. Fluttering like the wind, this opening was a little too miserable. If it was someone with a bad mentality, they would probably be so angry that they would quit the game. An errand mission gave 100 experience and a $10 tip. After a night of not eating or drinking and doing 5 missions in a row, he had finally saved up 50 yuan. A car accident had cost him 20 yuan. Who wouldn't blow up if he was gone? However, this guy's luck was a little bad. I wonder who's so good at driving that the guild master of the Miracle Guild has experienced the dangers of the Sand City the moment he entered the game. To be able to drive on the sidewalk and not break in a situation, he must be a talent. Link then looked at the comments below the post. They were even more well written. Player 1, haha, you deserve it. Without a tuxedo and a glass of red wine, how dare he call himself an upper class person? Get out of the Sand City. The Sand City doesn't welcome lowlifes. Player 2, Guildmaster Wind Chaser, if it's convenient, can you reveal the coordinates of your car accident? Little brother, I'm also in Shadu. I just want to go over and help you protect Bing Kaluo and half a fried chicken. I promise I won't eat them. Player 3, Screenshot. The all-powerful guild leader Windchaser has been defeated by an unknown female driver. Player 4, this time, it's really Windchaser. Player 5, the shaking ice falls, the fried chicken is stained with blood. That unusual beauty, the unforgivable sin. Windchaser's PRO thought, you guys upstairs, you're all dogs. Just as Link was enjoying the show, he suddenly heard a commotion outside. Fu's trembling voice was followed by a sobbing tone. Boss, bad news, I ran someone over with my car. Chapter 86 Casting a long line to catch a big fish, 3/5. Before Link could react, Fu ran into the office, panting heavily. He repeated himself. Boss, it's bad, I ran someone over with my car. Link suddenly thought of the crusade post that was full of joy and gentleness. It couldn't be a coincidence, right? Don't panic, tell me what happened slowly. Fu gulped and calmed down a little before saying, this morning, I went out with Fred to buy newspapers. When we came back, Fred said that there were fewer people on the street in the morning and asked me to drive and experience it. It was a smooth drive, but a cat suddenly appeared on the road. I panicked and mistook the accelerator for the brake. I crashed into the side of the road and directly hit a pedestrian, sending him flying. The case was solved. It really was Fu who killed Zui Feng. Link didn't know what to say. There were 30 million people in the Shitu, and the chances of these two meeting were extremely slim. How could it be so coincidental? Boss, Fred and I carried the body to the trunk of the car and drove all the way back. What do we do now? Fu's entire body trembled, and his eyes were filled with fear. Link patted Fu's shoulder and consoled him, take me to the corpse first. After a player died, their corpse would remain for 10 minutes before it disappeared. After that, players could choose to resurrect at the place where they died. If there was a resurrection point, hospital, nearby, the system would also prompt whether to resurrect at the hospital. Link walked out of the office. Fred was in the rest area, his head lowered like a child who had done something wrong. If he hadn't encouraged Brother Fu to put it into practice, that person wouldn't have been killed. Although shooting and killing people were as common as eating and drinking after joining a gang, most of the people they killed were from the opposing gang. Very few people would attack civilians. The thug's heart was not made of iron. He would not be able to sleep and eat in peace if he killed an innocent passerby with a car. The car involved in the accident was none other than Link's Will-O-Wisp V8, which was parked right in the alley. Because it had hit the side of the road, one of the headlights was completely broken, and the hood was a little deformed, but other than that, it was not a big problem. Fred walked to the back of the car and opened the trunk. There was a dead body in it. He was wearing the simplest t-shirt and cropped pants. Link could tell at a glance that these were clothes that newbies usually wore. He threw a detect on it and saw that the name was indeed Drifting Row of the Wind, but there was a dead word at the end. The thugs of Link's gang had also heard of the news and gathered around. This made Fu and Fred feel even more guilty. Why don't we find his family and pay for his funeral? The third brother suggested. In the slums of Shandu, where human life was as worthless as grass, there were countless murders and violence every day. It was unheard of for a gang to compensate for killing civilians by mistake. Link didn't say a word, and no one could guess what the boss was thinking. At that moment, everyone except Link took a step back in shock. The body in the trunk suddenly disappeared. Fu's expression was frozen. Self-blame and shock intertwined on his face, making him look constipated. He asked in a sobbing tone. Where's the corpse? How did such a huge corpse suddenly disappear? The others looked at each other, a chill running down their spines. They had never seen such a scene before. Number 3 glanced at Link and saw that his boss's expression was the same as usual. Boss doesn't look surprised at all. Did he know in advance that the corpse would disappear? The more third brother thought about it, the more strange he felt. After seeing the corpse, Boss didn't say a word, as if Yuya was waiting for the corpse to disappear. Third brother thought about it again and decided to break through this layer of window paper. He asked, "Boss, did you already know that the corpse would disappear?" For a moment, everyone reacted. Only Boss was not scared away, and there was no expression on his face. Link pointed at the empty trunk. "I can tell that he's not a human with one look." "Not human?" Everyone shivered and goosebumps appeared on their bodies. Under the sunlight, they actually felt a chill. Link was not lying. In the eyes of NPCs, players were indeed not considered humans. If you use a guy who can resurrect 50 times a week to call people, the NPCs will cry. These adventurers who were greedy, bold, and could be resurrected had a moving name: the Fourth Calamity. Link closed the trunk of the car and dusted his hands. He said calmly, "Go back, you'll see this kind of situation more often in the future, so don't make a fuss." Everyone was still confused. What did he mean by "will be very common"? If Boss said he wasn't human, then what was he? Number 3 called everyone back to the courtyard and carefully pondered over what number 1 had just said. From what the boss was saying, he seemed to know something and was giving them a heads up. Seeing the body disappear with his own eyes, Fu was even more shocked than the dead man. However, when Boss said that this thing wasn't human, the guilt in Fu's heart dissipated a lot. "Boss, this is today's newspaper." Fu placed the newspaper on the table and went to prepare lunch. Link flipped through the newspaper. The Wasteland Morning Post was still a high-end editorial and research. The entire page today was about the current resources and status of Wasteland. In the end, it concluded that the situation was not optimistic, and the end was focused on the discovery of new energy and new colonial planets. As expected of the Wasteland Star Morning Post, the Freedom Federation has been secretly studying space science for several years in an attempt to unravel the mysteries of the energy pillar. The experiments have just ended in the early morning, and the newspaper is already making arrangements. They're throwing a stone to find the way. Link picked up the Shudu Entertainment news again. The Rare Animal Beauty Contest was still being advertised, and it was stated that the preliminary registration would close in 2 days. And today's newspaper was surprisingly divided into a section of content, which was actually discussing people's attitude towards the discovery of extraterrestrial civilization. Link looked at the positive and negative opinions below. The papers were clearly leading the positive and negative views of peace and tolerance. Focused Science was even more straightforward. It directly wrote about the probability of other civilizations existing in the universe. It seemed like the officials had already gotten some useful information about the experiment in the early hours of the morning. Now, even these newspapers with official backgrounds had begun to lay the foundation. The last copy of On the Streets and in Alleys was simple and crude. Link glanced at it and saw that there were several small sections the size of tofu with anecdotes written on them. Basically, it was nothing more than people who suddenly appeared, spouting nonsense, clearly dead, but then saw them alive and kicking half an hour later, and so on. It had to be said that a gossip newspaper was the most honest and straightforward. However, everyone basically treated it as an afterthought. Except for those involved, almost no one took it seriously. Link closed the newspaper. The plan in his mind was gradually perfected. He was going to cast a long line to catch a big fish. On the street, a young man pouted and looked aggrieved. Traces of the car accident could still be seen on the side of the road, but the ice cola and half-fried chicken on the ground had long disappeared. The wind-like soft eyes rolled and she gritted her teeth. That was his hard-earned money. He wanted to find the perpetrator and make him pay the price. Wind-chasing Wolf tried to recall the car that hit him. The car was black and had flames on it. On the side of the car, there seemed to be a few words printed. He seemed to be called Jack something? Chapter 87. It's time to expand my skills. In Destiny, Wind Chaser like Pro was originally a pugilist, and she was particularly outstanding. At the end of version 2.0 type eye contact, the players successfully left the novice planets and entered the universe. The players from the 3 major novice planets successfully met and organized the first professional league. Wind Chaser, floating soft, had won first place in the pugilist class among tens of millions of players, and had also obtained a good result of being in the top 5 in the chaotic battle ranking competition, which did not discriminate between classes. Such a talent descended in Shandu, and now he's been killed by Fu. I have to make good use of him. Link thought for a moment and decided to go to the library again today. LV14 level 15 requires 12900 experience points. Do you want to level up? Yes/no. Yes. After fusing 3 pets yesterday, Lin Ke only had a thin layer of health left. He decided to level up first to recover all his health. Lin Ke was now at level 15 and could learn 2 more skills. This time, he had set his sights on the 2 skills of a pugilist. One was Protective Dipper Energy, and the other was Charging Fist. Link was swift and decisive. Since he had nothing to do now, he might as well do it now. He walked out of the office and told Third Brother, the Will-O-Wisp V8 is temporarily parked on the side of the road. Also, the registration for the Rare Animal Beauty pageant will end in 2 days. You can go and make some arrangements. You'll know the animals we're going to take part in when you go to the basement. Third Brother thought for a moment. The white-headed sea eagle and the hunting dog had been tamed by Boss and brought out. In the basement, there were only lions, tigers, mutant wolves, and alpacas. Since it was a Rare Animal Beauty contest, it could only be alpacas. As for not fixing Will-O-Wisp V8 for the time being, Third Brother didn't understand, but that didn't stop him from carrying out his boss's arrangement. After all, many facts had proven that sometimes he only saw the first level and thought that Boss was on the 3rd level, but in fact, Boss was on the 5th level. Don't worry, Boss, I'll definitely get it done. Link extended a hand. Do you have a car? I need one. I'm going out to do something. The black car at the entrance. Third Brother took out his car keys. Ah Fu, who was preparing lunch, ran out of the kitchen. She was still wearing an apron and was holding a knife and a spoon in one hand. Boss, if you're going out, do you want to take me along? Just focus on cooking, I'll be back before noon. Link waved his hand, and the bird's nest made of waste paper brightened. It immediately cawed and said that it wanted to follow its master. Just as half of its body crawled out of the pile of waste paper, the white-bladed sea eagle behind it stepped on its body with its claws as a stepping board and rose into the air. The sand eagle smacked its lips and fell to the ground. After getting up, the sand eagle glanced around and found that no one had noticed its ugly appearance. It hurriedly tidied up its appearance with its wings, then flapped its wings and followed. Link walked out of the alley and saw the Will-O-Wisp V8 parked at a prominent spot by the side of the road. He could not help but smile. Now that the bait had been set, he hoped that wind-chasing Pro would come to him. Based on Link's understanding of wind, he was a man who would take revenge. In the first professional tournament, she had lost to the Moon Queen of Pandora in the ranking battle. The enmity between the two lasted until Heart of the Swarm version 6.0 before Link transmigrated. The post was full of complaints. Link didn't believe that it wouldn't come looking for him. He got into Third Brother's car and opened the window. The white saber sea eagle and the sand eagle swooped in from the outside. He drove all the way to the Golden Bank Bridge and headed to the city library. Link arrived at the entrance of the city library in no time. The sand eagle and the white saber sea eagle jumped out of the car window and landed on the top of the city library in advance. It was a working day, so the entrance to the city library was deserted. There were not many people there, especially in the early morning. Link walked up the steps to the library's entrance, but he did not see Benjamin's fiancée, Jenny. "Sir, please disassemble your personal belongings and firearms and put them to the side." Just as Link was about to take off his jacket, a man walked out of the library with a smile on his face. "Hi, Mr. Lin. I didn't expect to see you again. Link took a closer look. Wasn't this the Jenny he had been thinking about? Looking at her dress today, she was wearing a simple and elegant floral dress. Her hair was tied up in a bun, which perfectly outlined the intellectual beauty of a woman. Coincidentally, Link also saw the curator tag on Jenny's chest. You got promoted? Congratulations! Jenny pulled up her hair and said in embarrassment, just the acting chief. It looks like he'll be the chief soon. Jenny then turned around and said to the staff of the city library, Mr. Lin is a VIP of the city library, so you don't need to search or remove your weapons when you enter the library. The library's security guards and staff all nodded, trying to remember Lin K's appearance. At the same time, the system sent out a prompt. You have received 5,000 reputation points in the Shadu Library. You have become a VIP guest at the Library of Sha City. Link entered the Fame interface and saw that there was indeed a new option. Shadu Library, respected, 5,000/6,000-VIP. At the same time, Link saw a string of instructions behind the VIP title. VIP, the experience points required to level up skills in the Library of Shadu City are reduced by 25%. Link's eyes brightened. He didn't think there would be such a trick. It was really easy to do things with someone in the court. In his previous life, Link had never heard of anyone who had gained the reputation of the city library. He also did not know that being a VIP of the city library had the effect of reducing the EXP required. Many thanks. Jenny didn't think so and just treated it as returning the favor. If not for Link's decisive action at the library's entrance that day, she and Benjamin would have really died from the poison. Naturally, she wouldn't have the identity of Jiming's fiancé today. Moreover, Benjamin often mentioned Link in front of her. Now that she was the acting curator, she was just doing him a favor at no cost. Mr. Lin, please attend my wedding with Benjamin. Jenny said with a smile as she led Link into the library. Oh? Have you guys set the date? No. Jenny shook her head. Benjamin and I both want to wait for Commander Mun to return from his mission before holding the wedding. After all, Benjamin is Commander Mun's only son, and it would be too cruel for a father to miss the wedding. All right, I've confirmed the time. I'll definitely be there. Then I won't bother you anymore, Mr. Lin, Jenny nodded with a smile. I'll get going. Link looked at Jenny's back and couldn't help but smile. He had gained a lot from this trip to the library. Just the identity of a VIP who did not need to use disarmed weapons provided him with great convenience. In his previous life, players had to be forced to disarm when they entered the library. Not to mention the powerful effect of reducing the required experience by 25%. As a scholar, learning a skill already required an additional 100% EXP. Now that it was reduced by 25%, Link could save a lot of EXP. Chapter 88 The First Level 10 Skill. Link went straight to the librarian. Hello, I'm looking for Protective Dipper Energy and Grandmaster of Combat's basic moves. When the librarian saw Link, he couldn't help but size him up. I haven't seen you for 2 days, and I feel like you've improved a lot. The 2 books you're looking for are on the first row of the martial arts zone, the first book on the second floor of bookshelf B, and the other one, Charging Fist, which is 12 books after that. Link could tell that the librarian was referring to his level. After all, he still had the Becoming Well-Educated mission on him, which required him to come back to the class mentor after he reached level 50. Link found 2 books in the martial arts section and immediately began to read. You have reached 100% comprehension of Protective Dipper Energy. Protective Dipper Energy Level 1 has been activated. Body Protecting Energy, a fighter's introductory heart technique, refining essence into energy, able to release energy. Protective Dipper Energy Level 1, Close Combat Hit Rate plus 1%, Attack Speed plus 1%, Resistance plus 1%, Endurance plus 1, Strength plus 1. After finishing the first book, Link continued to read the other book, basic moves of a pugilist. Compared to the NPCs who had to study hard, it was much more convenient for players. They could just choose the loading bar. Fortunately, Link's Scholar class also gave him a speed boost in reading and absorbing. You have reached 100% comprehension of basic fighter moves and have learned the forward punch skill. Forward punch was one of the most basic moves of a Grandmaster of Combat. It was a combination of inner and outer strength to unleash a burst of power. Straight punch LVL1, explosive charge, sudden increase in speed, movement speed plus 10%, 30 points of damage to target, consumption, 10 energy/time. Link returned the two books to their original positions and let out a long sigh. His skill library had been expanded by 2 more skills. In order to catch Wind Chaser, Link had put in a lot of effort. In Link's eyes, Wind Chaser was a high-level player. At the end of version 2.0, the universe had entered its era, and pugilists were no longer popular. Instead, mechanics and espers had started to shine. In the background of the decline of the pugilist department, it could be said that the wind-chasing softness had raised the pugilist department to a height that did not belong to it, developing all kinds of moves and combo techniques. Link's main class in his previous life was also a pugilist. He had learned many small tricks from the videos that Fluttering in the Wind had posted. In addition, Wind-Chasing Wolf was also the guild master of Miracle. As long as Wind was settled, he would be assigned some tasks. Would the guild members help? Taking care of one person was equivalent to recruiting a guild. This was a huge profit. If the system gave a title based on a player's behavior, Link would definitely have the word Shepherd above his head. And Wind-Chasing Wolf also had the word Leader above his head. The last time Link came to the library, he did not choose to use the protective aura. The main reason was that the number of skills was limited, and he did not have much experience. Even if he learned protective dipper energy, he couldn't reach the maximum level. Rather than increasing a few attribute points, it was better to choose a more useful skill. Link now had a total of 7 skills, both offensive and support. In addition to the 43,000 experience points he had, Link chose the protective aura. It could be seen from the effect of protective dipper energy that a fighter's protective cultivation method would increase endurance and strength. Once he reached the maximum level of 10, he would also activate additional health points. Link remembered that in his previous life, every time the Shield of Vigor leveled up, it would cost 500 experience points. To level it up to level 10, it would cost 22500 experience points. The experience required to become a scholar was doubled. However, with the title of Shadow Library VIP, the experience required could be reduced by 25%. In fact, it was only 75% more. In total, it was 39,375 points. Protective Aura level 1 to level 2 requires 875 experience points. Do you want to upgrade? Yes/no. Protective Aura level 2 to level 3 requires 1750 experience points. Do you want to upgrade? Yes/no. Link tapped as he went and successfully raised his Shield of Vigor from level 1 to level 10. Protective Dipper Energy level 10, melee hit rate plus 10%, attack speed plus 10%, resistance plus 10%, endurance plus 10, strength plus 10. You have successfully raised Protective Dipper Energy to level 10, activating Specialty Strengthened Chi and Blood, health points plus 100. Link heaved a sigh of relief and looked at his attribute panel. His HP had increased to 410 points, but he only had a pitiful 3910 experience points left. In Link's words, there was not a drop left. Wind Chasing PRO, I've put in a lot of effort for you this time. You must not let me down. Lin K mumbled to himself and left the city library. After getting up, Link furrowed his brows. Not only did he not feel the benefits of having his blood strengthened, but he also felt as if his body had been hollowed out. Sigh, this is what it means to not gain any experience. I don't even have the confidence to walk. Link shook his head helplessly. He had to earn some experience points quickly, or he wouldn't even be able to walk with confidence. After Link left, the old librarian poked his head out of the bookshelf and stared at Link's back. He then smiled imperceptibly. Mr. Lin, you're welcome to come again. Mr. Lin, please take care. As Lin Ke walked out of the city library, the security guards and staff at the entrance all bade him farewell. What was face? Tactical retreat. The white saber sea eagle and the sand eagle flew down from the roof of the library. Link had originally planned to let the two eagles fly back to the Link gang, but seeing the sand eagle's weak appearance, he gave in. Forget it, you should just get in the car. Then, he touched the white saber sea eagle's head and said, Little White, you can just go back. The treasure hunting mouse also jumped into the car from its pocket. It placed its two paws on its waist and chattered, as if to say, Next, we're going to do some things that only men can do. You old women can go home first. The white-bladed sea eagle pressed treasure hunting mouse onto the car's engine with one wing. Then, its sharp claws pinched the back of treasure hunting mouse's neck and it quacked in protest. After the white-blade sea eagle flew away, the treasure hunting mouse ran to the sand eagle's side and hugged its leg tightly with its little claws. The sand eagle also used its wings to protect the treasure hunting mouse, shedding bitter tears. They were clearly the master's earliest pets, from the dragon's credit. How did they end up in this state? The two of them looked in the direction that the white-blade sea eagle had flown off in and sighed in their hearts. Perhaps this was a green-grade boss. All right, stop acting. We should get going. Link knocked on the hood of the car and started the engine. The car quickly left the uptown and returned to the slums through the Golden Bridge. Link spent more than an hour in the library. It was 11:30, and it was almost time for the lunch break. The number of cars on the road gradually increased. The streets of the slums were congested. The car stopped at a red light. At that moment, Lin Ke suddenly noticed that a ray of light from the mirror was reflected into the car. Suddenly, Link's hair stood on end, and he immediately knelt down. Bang bang bang! 3 muffled sounds of muffled sniper rifles came from the roadside buildings. The bullet pierced through the door and entered the car. Chapter 89 Solving the Killer. Link fell down immediately. Little treasure, lock onto the enemy's position. Idiot, use the sandstorm to protect me. The treasure hunting mouse immediately jumped out of the car window. It raised its head and saw a thick, long black thing sticking out from the tall building next to it. At the same time, it smelled the enemy in the house. The sand eagle jumped out of the rear window and flapped its wings, ready to fly into the air. Suddenly, the sand eagle let out a miserable cry. He suddenly felt weak and fell face first to the ground. Bang bang! The sniper rifle's bullet entered the car again. The bullet shattered the rear window, passed through the driver's seat, and penetrated the muscle in Lin Ke's right arm. You have been shot in the right arm by a sniper rifle, causing 45 damage, resistance offset by 5 points. Link groaned as his entire right arm ached. He gritted his teeth and stepped on the door. He moved forward and opened the door of the passenger seat. The sand eagle also rose into the air with great difficulty, releasing sand and dust half a meter above the ground. The camera of the sniper in the residential building moved to the sand eagle. However, in the next second, the entire car was covered by yellow sand. Even the cars next to it were caught in the sand. The killer suddenly lost his target and frowned. However, he didn't just stand there and watch. He continued firing into the sand to predict Link's position. At first, the people in the surrounding cars did not hear the sound of the silenced sniper rifle. They sat in their cars in frustration, pressing their heads and honking non-stop. However, when the dust vortex with a diameter of 5 meters rolled up, the irritated citizens in the car were all dumbfounded, thinking that a tornado had appeared on the spot. The people in the vehicles that were engulfed by the sand and dust were so scared that they rolled up their windows and screamed in fear. The people outside the dust cloud reacted one by one. They immediately got out of their cars and started to flee in all directions. The assassin's attention was now diverted. The camera kept moving around the sand and dust, wary of Link who might escape in the chaos. All of a sudden, a silver metal arrow shot out of the dust and headed straight for him. The killer quickly retracted his body instinctively and dodged to the side. Pa! In the next second, the silver metal arrow pierced through the red bricks and concrete wall. In an instant, it pierced through the sniper's body, bringing out a stream of blood. With a bang, it was nailed to the ceiling. The killer gritted his teeth and looked down at his pierced ribs and his bulletproof vest. He then looked at the metal arrow stuck in the ceiling and gasped. What kind of arrow is this? Its penetration is so powerful. It went through the wall, the bulletproof suit, and then the ceiling. The assassin's mind went blank. The power of this arrow was even more terrifying than the armor-piercing bullets used to hit armored tanks. Most importantly, the information he'd gathered didn't indicate that Link had such a terrifying item. This meant that Link had been hiding a trump card from the start. The killer pressed on the wound with one hand and picked up a small mirror with the other. He observed the situation outside by relying on the reflection of the mirror. The dust that had been blown up had disappeared, but Link was nowhere to be seen. Even the vulture was nowhere to be seen. The killer endured the pain and got up to set up his sniper rifle again. They used their high magnification scopes to do a carpet search around the car, but they didn't find any traces of Link. The killer frowned. His wave of sniping had failed. The killer disassembled the sniper rifle at an extremely fast speed and loaded it into the black cylinder. Even though he was injured and beads of sweat were dripping on the ground, his expression was still calm as he carried the cylinder on his back. As he walked, he took out a bandage to bandage his wound. The killers were in good order and did not panic because of their injuries. After the wound was bandaged, the killer walked to the door. At this moment, a person was tied up by the door. His mouth was stuffed with a rag, and his eyes were filled with fear. My mission is over. I'm sorry for borrowing your house for a while. You're free now. The killer walked to the back of the person who was tied up and gently helped him up. The landlord's eyes were filled with shock and doubt. He could not believe that the killer would really let him live. Under normal circumstances, wouldn't they kill someone to vent their anger? However, the owner of the house did not see the killer holding a gun, and a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. Perhaps, he could really live. The landlord felt the hemp rope around his wrist being released, and his hands could actually move. Then, a pair of hands climbed up his neck and cheeks and pulled out the rag stuffed in his mouth. The landlord's heart was beating wildly, and the desire to live was growing wildly in his heart. Cacat! With a crisp sound, the landlord's eyes were wide open. Before he could react, his neck was broken, and he died. Even until his death, he did not understand why the killer had broken his promise to release him. The killer slowly got up, pushed the door open and walked out quietly. He heard a series of rapid footsteps on the stairs. Dong dong dong, like a small drum, it was getting closer and closer. The killer walked to the window of the stairs, took out a wet cloth and covered the window, then broke the glass with a punch. The broken glass didn't make a crisp sound. The killer jumped out of the building with a rope in his hand. Like an immortal, he descended from the sky gracefully. As he fell, he could see the scene of each floor through the window. Suddenly, the assassin saw Link from the window. He was very close to him. Link stood in front of the window with his hands in his pockets, a strange smile on his face. That smile seemed to be saying that he had been waiting for a long time. The assassin's expression changed. He had clearly heard Link rush up the stairs, but how had Link appeared by the window in the blink of an eye? He had guessed that Link would use the window rope to escape. Whoosh! Link whistled, and two metal arrows suddenly appeared. They pierced through the glass at an extreme speed, piercing the assassin's heart and lungs. Your silver array wall ant has struck the heart of the killer, causing 394 points of critical damage with bleeding effect. Your silver array wall ant has struck the killer's lung, causing 134 damage. Link didn't pursue. Instead, he waved his hand in the air. A flying knife with a cold glint flew out from the sleeve of the suit, cutting off the killer's rope. The killer fell to the ground, and the self-destructing fly that Link had placed downstairs lay on the ground obediently. Immediately, a series of explosions erupted from the ground. Your self-destructing fly exploded, causing 57 damage to the hitman, 10 points reduced by the bulletproof vest. Your self-destructing fly exploded, dealing 60 points of damage to the hitman, the bulletproof vest nullifies 8 points. After a series of passionate explosions, Link stuck his head out to take a look. The assassin who had fallen to the ground was charred black and on the verge of death. The assassin's mind went blank. Other than the vulture's sandstorm, Link's other moves were not recorded in his combat data at all. The treasure-hunting mouse quickly jumped to the killer's chest. With its two little claws on his chest, it took a step forward and held its head high. He was like a superhero who had subdued a criminal. Link walked down from the residential building. He had already bandaged the wound on his arm, and the bleeding had stopped. However, the bloodstains on the sleeves of his suit were still clearly visible. He looked at the assassin who was breathing more heavily than he was breathing and cast a detect on him. "Yo, old Niao.